What's up guys, it's me, TXC Bands, and I'm back with another One Piece chapter review. This week we have chapter 1099, so we're getting real close to the 1100 milestone. And the chapter is titled Pacifist this week, after Bartholomew Kuma. And the chapter continues along with Kuma's backstory again, but we're definitely getting close to the end considering how recent the events are in this chapter. We started a whole 47 years ago with Kuma's birth, and now we are just up to about 5 years before the present. And this is just another big chapter for Kuma's development because he's still going through all these struggles. And if you remember last chapter, King Bekari, he returned at the end. So that's where we are going to start out this chapter. But before we get into it, I'll ask that you like and subscribe because it'll help me out greatly. But with that being said, let's begin. The cover this week is simply just Odin, and he has some tanukis messing with his hair. They're actually making it into like a building. And this is another reader request, but maybe since 1100 is coming up next week, we'll start a cover series soon. Now we begin the chapter with Kuma absolutely tanking the flames that were set through all the towns on Sorbet Kingdom by King Bekari as revenge. He will save the innocent people no matter what because that's just who Kuma is. And Bekari says that he got the idea of setting fire to all of the lawless land from the Goa Kingdom in the east, which is the home of Luffy. And literally all the people are against Bekari because he's burning their towns, of course, and they're all resisting his power. And then Bekari, he even commands one of his guards to kill a few of them just to keep them quiet, which is just crazy and super tyrannical on his part. And Kuma, he's still just charging in, extremely angry at King Bekari. And we see the church where Bonnie is, and she's standing in the door watching in fear and in awe of Kuma as he rampages, saving everyone, but she's also kind of scared that he might die. And we see Kuma's big attack on Bekari, a massive Ursus shock that destroys the entire castle, and they call it the one-man revolution because Kuma literally was the only fighter. And I don't know how, but King Bekari actually managed to survive the brute force of Kuma's attack because he appears again later in this chapter. And now in Mary Joa, someone reports this all to Saint J. Garcia Saturn, and it turns out that the people made Kuma into the king of Sorbet because they were so inspired by his revolution. And being his humble self, King Kuma remains in his church. Kuma is more of like a figurehead because the country is actually being run by King Bulldog, the former king. Bulldog ruled before King Bekari, so he has ruling experience. It's kind of like Hiruzen from Naruto. And then we see Bonnie. She's just running around the church, but she's actually in an adult form. So Bonnie, by just happenstance, stumbled across the age fruit. She couldn't have left the house, so the fruit must have just like appeared in the house, spawning in, maybe by a will of its own. We don't actually know. And everyone in the building is obviously blown away by this. They even think that Bonnie is Ginny at first glance. And Bonnie doesn't even notice herself until she looks in the mirror to see that she's an adult. To show off her fruit some more, Bonnie tries to transform into an old lady, but she fails. Instead, Queen Dowager Connie came in, so they kind of mistakenly think that Bonnie actually successfully turned into an old lady, even though it's just Connie. And if you remember from Reverie, Connie was the one who Bonnie pretended to be. The names are too similar, but Bonnie pretended to be Connie in order to infiltrate Maryjoa. And with Connie comes King Bulldog, her son, and he walks in with a newspaper. And King Bulldog just looks old as hell, so it's crazy to think that he has a mother who's even still alive. And the newspaper he's holding has a fake story about Kuma being titled an evil tyrant, which we knew was going to happen. But King Beckery must have used his influence with the Celestial Dragons to cause this story to be published. So everyone in Sorbet Kingdom knows that Kuma's not a tyrant, but that doesn't affect the outside world at all. The paper also mentions that Beckery will come back to get his revenge on Sorbet Kingdom, which makes Kuma go into serious mode. Kuma decides in order to protect the safety and security of the kingdom, he goes to fight Beckery on the sea away from the kingdom. And he leaves Bonnie under the protection of Connie and Bulldog in their palace. So she has a new place to stay, which is good for her, I guess. We then see the crazy panel of Kuma on a little sailboat in the ocean, facing off against 3 huge marine battleships. And Beckery is leading these ships. And we don't actually see the battle, but Kuma ended up sinking the entire armada, which would have definitely contributed to his tyrant reputation, having that kind of power. And here is where he gets branded as a pirate, and we don't see his bounty, but we see his wanted poster. And I imagine his bounty is pretty high because he killed a king. And we cut back to Bonnie, who is missing her father, but she's being cared for by Connie, so she's alright. She even exclaims that she wants to become a pirate just like her father, so that she could go on adventures with her father. And she'll become a pirate when she's 10 years old, when she's cured, but obviously it's the other way around. She'll die by 10 years old if not treated. And about that, Kuma now is looking all around the world for a cure to the Sapphire Scale, and we see a montage of that. He visits a lot of the islands that he ends up sending the Straw Hats to on Sabaody, so it's nice to see him here. He goes to the Torino Kingdom, and he talks to the caveman residents there, and this is where Chopper went. He visits the Kurigana Kingdom, where Zoro went, and where Mihawk and Perona lived. And then unrelated to the quest, but Abdullah and Jeet from Dressrosa try to get Kuma's bounty, and they fail. Just had to mention that because it's in the chapter. And then he goes to Baltimore, where Frankie went and where Vegapunk was born. He goes to Tequila Wolf, where Robin was, Nakamura Island, where Brooke was, Witheria, where Nami was, and the Boeing Archipelago, where Usopp was. And it was nice to see all these islands, but Kuma doesn't find anything on any of them, so his quest is kind of failing. Then he comes across Dragon and the Revolutionary Army, who are his former allies at this point. So they all catch up in a big conversation, and they talk about how Ivankov and Inazuma were sent to Impel Down, and they're stationed there right now. And Bello Betty, who is currently in the present storyline Commander of the East, she asks Kuma for that spot as East Commander. And Dragon, he said to her that she needed Kuma's permission to get the position because Ginny held it, and Dragon kind of feels bad. It's kind of a nice sentimental thing for Dragon to do because I'm sure he feels horrible about the whole Ginny situation, and he couldn't do anything to stop it. They continue talking, and Dragon mentions Sabo and Koala. Just had to mention that, because Sabo's the guy. And then the conversation turns over to Dr. Vegapunk, because Dragon thinks this man can help Bonnie in her illness. And just recently, the explosion on Punk Hazard happened, and Vegapunk is now in a new lab. So Dragon thinks that Kuma, since Vegapunk's in a new lab, can get into the lab because of the lack of security. And Kuma thanks him and offers to rejoin the revolution when everything's finished, but Dragon just tells him, go where the wind takes you. And this has to be hinting at Dragon's devil fruit being related to the wind, which many theorists have thought for years now. So Kuma goes home to the Sorbet Kingdom after a long journey to see Bonnie and to bring her to Dr. Vegapunk. And it's funny because as he walks in, Bonnie is beating up an adult trainer. So she has really grown in strength since last time Kuma has seen her. So we cut to then the Navy Science Division Lab 8, which is what Egghead Island originally looked like. And it is interesting to see the island in this state only just a few years ago. In fact, it's a winter island here. So Vegapunk's weather changing technology seems to have worked really well. So Kuma carries Bonnie in a little box to keep her away from sunlight, and he arrives on the island in front of Dr. Vegapunk. Vegapunk is absolutely astonished by Kuma's size because he has never seen a member of the Buccaneer race. Kuma is probably the last member of the Buccaneer race left. So he just wants to start experimenting on him right away. And Vegapunk here still has his super long head. So this is before Punk Records and the satellites were created. And he tells Kuma that he actually can cure Bonnie, which is just such a relief for Kuma. After his long journey, he finally has a solution. And we see Bonnie, who is still oblivious to her situation, playing around with Sentomaru's axe. And back to Vegapunk, he says that he will use a stem cell transplant to cure her. But this is very expensive, as science always is expensive, especially Vegapunk's science. And Vegapunk has the idea of using Kuma in his clone soldier project as a cost for saving Bonnie. And Kuma, again, is just willing to do anything. And he tells Kuma all about his plans with these clone soldiers, saying that they will be heroes and will protect the weak. And we know currently that they aren't used for protecting the weak, and they're mainly used as weapons. And we'll see the reason for that at the very end of this chapter. Vegapunk is really excited now about his plan, and Kuma starts to feel comfortable with the idea of being used to become a clone. And then we get to see a glance at Marie-Joie, where Saint Saturn is listening. And Saint Saturn is the reason that these clones were made as weapons, rather than instruments of peace like Vegapunk originally planned on. And back in Lab 8, Kuma and Vegapunk are still getting along as they prepare for this experiment. And Kuma says that he's just a spineless pacifist, which is where Vegapunk got the idea of the name for his clone soldiers, the Pacifistas. And that's the end of the chapter. It was another fast-paced chapter because Kuma's entire life is being fit within these chapters. Kuma has proven time and time again that he is a great peace-loving man, and it's just unfortunate that the pacifistas will get misused in the present day. And Vegapunk, he's in the same boat. He just wants peace, but the government just messes it all up, and it just stirs more and more hate for the world government. And returning to the topic of Bonnie, the acquiring of her devil fruit was interesting to say the least. She must have gotten the power of the age fruit because of her a deep desire to grow older and to live, showing that fruits might have a will of their own to go to the user that needs it the most, maybe. And I think this backstory will soon come to an end, probably next chapter, because there's not much left to cover. In the next chapter, 1100, we'll probably return to the Straw Hats because of the fact that it's a milestone chapter. And this is my first time since starting One Piece to experience a 100 chapter milestone. So I hope that the chapter will be a good one. And there's no break either, so we won't have to wait that long to see it. So if you made it all the way to the end of this video, thanks for watching. Tune in next week for the 1100 video, and like and subscribe because it'll really help me out. And I'll see you in the next video.